On January 17th of 2016, I woke up and I was in excruciating pain, and that was not normal. So I went to the emergency room and I was told that it's probably just a bug, so here's some medicine and take it and you'll be better by the end of the weekend. The weekend came and it went, and I wasn't any better, and I was just continuing to get worse. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, I ended up getting to the point where I had to withdraw from college and move back home with my family, where they would essentially become my full-time caregivers. I kept getting worse and worse. My life became doctor's appointments and tests and needles and blood work and exploratory surgeries, all the things just to figure out what in the world was wrong. And it was 3 years after that I finally received a diagnosis of FND. It's a neurological disorder where essentially my brain can't communicate to the rest of my body and vice versa in the way that it's supposed to, in the way that God designed it to. There was one time where I had gone to an inpatient rehabilitation center. I remember being at that rehabilitation center, and I went in with the mindset that I was gonna go to the center, I was going to get the physical therapy, the occupational therapy, the counseling. I was gonna get all these therapies, and I was going to, at this point I was in a wheelchair, so I couldn't walk at all. And so I had the mindset that I would go in, I'd get all these therapies, and I would be walking out of that therapy center. And that's not what happened. I went to the physical rehabilitation center, I got all the therapies, and I received the tools that I needed to continue to make improvements, but I didn't walk out of there. I was still in my wheelchair when I left. And I cried because that's not what I had planned, and that's not what, in my mind, God and I made a bargain, and he wasn't holding up his end of the bargain. It was really hard to see God in that because I had had all of this hope going into it. I had finally received my diagnosis. I had finally started getting the help that I needed to actually fight my diagnosis and what I was dealing with, and I was gonna relearn to walk. I wanted to be healed, and that's not what happened. And so seeing God, when you know that he can heal you and he's choosing not to, it's so hard to see God in that. Looking back at it now, I learned so much in those following months about God, about myself, about my illness that I wouldn't have learned if God had just snapped his fingers and healed me. I learned a whole heck of a lot of patience. I had to have a lot of patience. I learned determination to, when I feel like I can't take another step, the determination to just take one more step, and knowing that I can do it. I learned to rely on the joy of the Lord rather than finding joy in my own circumstances, realizing that he ultimately is my source of joy, and I can't find joy in what I'm going through because there's no joy in what I'm going through. Christ promises us in scripture that we will have trials and tribulations because that's the world that we live in. And at the same time, he promises that in his presence is fullness of joy, and that he came to give us life abundantly. You can be simultaneously broken and filled with abundant joy, because joy isn't a feeling, it's not a circumstance, it's a person. And that person is Jesus Christ. So as long as you have Jesus Christ within you, you can have both the pain and the joy and hold them in the same hand. And that's a really freeing truth, in my opinion.